Hello, 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 everybody. Vasu Vada Party, Charlie O, Casey Freelove. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. We had such a good time, or in some cases, such a bad time with March Madness and all the favorites that we needed an extra day off to get into the Sweet 16. What a day it was. I think with the fact that they moved it from Friday to Monday for the second round, gave us an extra day to kind of lick our wounds a little bit and or collect some profit. I did have some profit. I did go about 500 over the weekend, which is better than a lot. If you took a lot of the favorites, there were so many underdogs out there, and kids, look this up on your reference. If you don't understand the reference, there were so many underdogs out there. I was looking for a Poly Purebred logo somewhere out there for the underdog references. So fire away there. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast, powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Bigot. Download us on Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud, anywhere you get your podcast. Also, you can check us out on Facebook Live and the Stables Media YouTube page live. All right, Wednesday here, guys, midweek, hump week. The tournament's not going to resume. The Sweet 16 tournament's not going to resume until Saturday, which is really weird for me because otherwise I'd be really looking forward to the tournament starting up back tomorrow. So, Casey, how are you? What's going on? How's things?
Sometimes I should listen to my own advice. My girlfriend pointed out, she listened to the podcast that we did. It was thoughtful, analytical, and basically told you that underdogs were going to dominate the day. And then Daddy proceeds to give you, three favorites that all lost, an underdog that lost, and only one winner by the skin of my teeth with a half point with Greensboro. But, that's the beauty of gambling. Sometimes you learn lessons, and I guess I should thank the United States government for financing my trip because, in theory, I didn't actually lose a single dollar, Chuck.
Well, that's a good thing, Casey. And what a bizarre first weekend. I mean, we went into this kind of thinking, man, it's going to be a chalky tournament. I mean, we really did. So I was looking at it and I was trying not to be too chalky because those bore me. So as you know, I went 4 underdogs going in to that first weekend. I went 500, by the way. And then everything, I mean, let's face the facts. There's no other way to say it, just went to hell. And I just said, money, go back in your pocket and just watch to see what happened. And it wasn't just the games themselves. We don't, as we've mentioned before, I work for a sports station here in Sacramento. It wasn't just the games themselves and wagering. The network, Westwood One network, and my software computer didn't like each other. I had to go to the station 7 times and put the tournament back on the air. Games were going off the air. Teams that were winning that shouldn't win, losing who shouldn't win. I mean, let's just talk about it, guys. The Big Ten, the big conference going into this tournament. 9 teams, 1 team in the Sweet 16. Okay, now you predict that going into the tournament. Tell me you predicted that, and I'm going to look at you and go, liar.
No doubt. A very interesting first weekend here, the Make the Money and Run podcast. We did our show on Thursday night. That was our last show we did, previewing the Sweet 16. Check us out on Facebook Live. We want to hear from you. Chime in with your comments. Give us any emoji you want. Ask us anything you want about the Sweet 16. We got the NBA here to preview the Sweet 16 games. I'm Vasu Vada Party, Charlie O, Casey Freelove. What about last weekend, though? Geez, I want to talk about last weekend as we get to this weekend. It was very interesting to see what happened. Let's get to the first set of games here as far as the Sweet 16. We're looking at Baylor and Villanova and Arkansas and Oral Roberts, and that Baylor 7 over Villanova, Arkansas 11.5 over Oral Roberts. Baylor kind of had a little tough time in their first game, and then they cruised over Wisconsin in the second game. Villanova had 2 easy wins. I thought a lot of people thought there was a chance that Villanova might be exited after the second round. And yet here's Jay Wright and Villanova. They got James Robinson Earl back, so they don't have Gillespie back. Still, they cruised over North Texas on Sunday, blew them out by 20. That game was over 10 minutes to go in the first half. And then Arkansas's first game against St. Bonaventure was close, and then they came back and won their second game pretty much outright. But here's Oral Roberts, a double-digit seed, 2 wins, 1 over Ohio State, and then I forgot who they won the second game against. But
Florida.
Florida. They beat Florida. Right. They came back from 13 down against Florida and came back and ended up. I did like Oral Roberts to cover the game. I had no chance of them winning either game. But the fact that they got to the second game, I said 8 points is a lot for Oral Roberts. And Florida blew an 11-point lead, let's face it, and Oral Roberts is there. So let's take a look at this region. I believe this is the South region, right, that we're talking about? Yeah, the South region. Baylor at 7, Arkansas at 11.5. Go ahead, Casey. What's your impressions from last weekend? And then let's hit the South a little bit right here.
Baylor is just rounding into form, and I will be shocked if they aren't at the Final Four and or national championship game. The biggest takeaway I got from last weekend is either old coaching favorites like Boeheim and Syracuse or up-and-comers like Eric Musselman, who finally got his hands on a good program at Arkansas and has really just run with it with the SEC. Oregon State, I didn't even know who their coach was before the tournament, but he's got those guys believing. And I mean, that is literally the slowest team that I've seen. And we'll talk about them in a minute, but they're there. Villanova, Baylor, I am surprised that the Wildcats are there. They certainly rebounded without having Gillespie. And again, getting back to coaching favorites, Jay Wright has 2 national championships, and there's a reason why. He understands strategy better than most, and he was able to put together a nice string of wins. I think this is going to be a hell of a game. I'm not going to touch the point spread probably. I think that line's pretty decent. I expect Baylor to survive and advance. And then in the other South region, Sweet 16, Oral Roberts, I don't know what to make of Oral Roberts. I mean, they're a 15 seed. I was texting you, Vasu, on Thursday saying, now what state and city is this university located in, and who is Oral Roberts? So I learned more about Oral Roberts' history this weekend than I would have had they not had a chance to get to this point. But look, Charlie, we knew Arkansas was dangerous coming out of the SEC tournament. They lost in the semifinal to LSU, but they've really been peaking late. And these are all teams that have been peaking late. That's kind of the story of the Sweet 16. And I really feel like coaching is what's going to win, because more so than any other year, Chuck, you're not traveling all over the country and all that, but you've got to calm and sustain your guys while being stuck in a hotel room ordering takeout for weeks on end. And the coaches that were able to do it are still here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just finished, literally just finished before we started the podcast, listening to Andy Katz in his March Madness podcast, and he had Eric Musselman on, and he talked to Musselman about the whole thing of dealing with the guys in the bubble and everything else. And Musselman said, it's been tough. He said, this is not like the NBA. He said, we don't have a golf course that we can go to. We don't have, what do they call it? The lazy river that's just ours that we can have the guys go out and float in. He said, we are literally stuck in a hotel, and we are stuck on 3 floors. So he said, trying to keep these young guys from just going nuts has been really tough. So it's been hard for them to keep it together, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out on Saturday, because I think everybody is going to be like teams on that have ADD, or ADHD kind of thing, because they're just going to be so anxious to be on the floor and be able to actually do something and compete. And it's going to be almost like the coaches that can keep the teams under control. They're going to be like racehorses that have been in the gate too long. We've all seen that. The horses have to wait too long, and then they open the gate and everybody's stumbling coming out. And it'll be interesting to see how they do.
No doubt about it. Baylor is 7-point favorite, as we said, 140.5. That's might be a little high, but the way they score, they can get up and down. And Villanova, boy, if they shoot well, you just never know what Villanova team's going to come back. Arkansas 11.5 over Oral Roberts. Ordinarily, people would say 11.5 for an SEC team versus where's Oral Roberts, the Big South, I guess. No, they're not the Big South. I forgot what conference they are. This is how bad it is. We got like 6 double-digit seeds in the NCAA tournament, but it's going to be interesting from that standpoint. Let's move to the Midwest here real quick here. Loyola Chicago 6.5, a misseeded 8 seed to begin with. They got Oregon State. Houston 6, 140 in the Midwest. Loyola Chicago, the story right now in this foursome, Casey, or is it somebody else here?
No, it's Loyola of Chicago, and it's gamblers that got in early on them. And Sister Jean certainly has a level of karma to her that is helping these teams will themselves to a win. Now, as I say that, though, and I look over at those 12th seeded Beavers, the hottest team in the best conference remaining, Pac-12 Conference of Champions, Bill Walton. This is a great matchup. I'm very excited for this game. Look, I'm not going to lie. I lost a nice chunk on Oklahoma State money line. That was kind of my chase your losses bet, and the Beavers just outplayed them. They were way more physical. They're having guys that are role players step up and have career highs at March Madness, which literally is almost impossible to imagine. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and I don't even know who to pick in this game. This is going to be a wild matchup, and I think that this one could be one you want to be by your television set for the last few minutes. Loyola Chicago, again, we talk about coaching and stability. They've got that there. The fact that they got to play Illinois, all three of us should have seen that coming, that was going to be the upset special. Now, we didn't know the Big Ten was going to be an absolute garbage conference, the worst conference, basically, in March Madness. But to see what they did to the Illini, where they basically were comfortably ahead the whole game, nothing short of very impressive. So I think that is going to be a great game. And then the funny thing is, Syracuse, it's like, oh yeah, we forgot the coach's son, one of the greatest coaches to ever put on a pair of sneakers, has his own flesh and blood on the court, and he came to play for the Madness. And the other thing is, we always knew that ACC was going to get one team in the Sweet 16. We had no idea it was going to be Syracuse, but we knew that the ACC, because that's what they do every year. They have a team in the Sweet 16. They have a team in the Elite Eight. Usually that team is named Duke or North Carolina, but that's not the case this year. And I see no reason, Charlie, why Syracuse isn't primed and ready to go here. Again, another excellent coaching matchup with Boeheim and all his years, and then Kelvin Sampson and these Houston Cougars that a lot of people haven't seen. I imagine Las Vegas has got to be thrilled because, look, we watch sports every day. We watch college basketball every day, and we are baffled by these matchups. And this one, again, I think is probably going to be tight.
Yeah, that's really true, Casey. I want to jump back to that Oregon State Loyola game for just a second. Again, just because I just came off that Cats podcast, and I really like Cats. I think he's always gives great insight, and he's got a lot of years following college basketball. He made a great case that the real Cinderella team in the Sweet 16 is Oregon State. And he said, now, we don't normally think about Cinderella teams being from a major conference. But he said, when you think about it, Oregon State was not even going to be in the tournament if they hadn't won the conference tournament. They might not even have made the NIT, for heaven's sakes.
True.
So for them to be in the Sweet 16 is amazing. And I think this is going to be a very interesting game because you've got a team that's kind of like the little engine that could at this point in Oregon State, which is funny to say, against a team in Loyola Chicago that is a team that really believes in themselves at this point. And also, by the way, Sister Jean didn't say they were going to the Final Four. She said they were going to the Elite Eight. So you need to factor that in when you're wagering on this game. And then that Syracuse-Houston thing, as you guys know, I'm not a big Boeheim fan. And, you look at that and you go, well, the coach's son, what is he doing in there? Well, I got to tell you something. I got a little more respect for the coach and for the coach's son, because I just happened to come across the deal, and I always like to find stories behind stories. Jim Boeheim has 3 sons. All 3 of them right now are playing college basketball. 2 of them are at Ivy League schools, which tells you that Jim Boeheim didn't think they were good enough to play at Syracuse. So Buddy's not there because Buddy's dad is the coach. Buddy's there because Jim Boeheim thought Buddy was good enough to play. So all of a sudden, I got a little bit more respect for Jim Boeheim, who I really don't like, and I got a whole lot of respect for Buddy Boeheim, who obviously earned his way onto the team. Now, that being said, Calvin Sampson, please do me a favor. Knock that team out of this tournament. Please, please, please.
Well, I'll say this about Houston. The one thing Houston does is they rebound and they attack the offensive glass. Syracuse has had a tough time rebounding. Buddy Boeheim, obviously, hot shooting. He probably played himself into an NBA contract, honestly, with the way he's played right now. And his two other sons, Jimmy, I guess, is one. He played at Cornell. And I don't know the other son's name, but I thought he was still in high school, but I guess he's in college. And all the stories about Jim Boeheim and Buddy Boeheim, a lot of credit went to the mom and the wife. Apparently, she played some college basketball in her day, too, and she helped Buddy Boeheim with his jump shot going through high school and going through junior high school because Jim Boeheim was on the road a lot. So, moms are important, too. And apparently she knows her basketball as well, too. All right, Boston Battle Party, Case Free Love, Charlie O. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast. 2 regions down. We're going to the 3rd region right now, and then we'll hit the West region after this. But in the East, Michigan at 2.5, 143.5 versus Florida State. Alabama 6.5 versus another Pac-12 team. Here's UCLA. Here's Mick Cronin. They didn't even have their best player, Chris Smith, all year, but they turned up the defense against Abilene Christian. They turned up the defense against Michigan State in the second half of the play-in game. They're there right now to play an Alabama team who has had a little tough time shooting in the first few games, but defensively, Alabama came out to play. They dropped second half of the Maryland game. They came out offensively and dropped a bomb on Maryland because there was no way that Maryland offensively could keep up with Alabama. Alabama now 6.5. It actually went up about 9 o'clock this morning, West Coast time. It was 6, and then it went up to 6.5 already, 145.5. The way UCLA shut down Abilene Christian, they was 12-8 Abilene Christian, 15 minutes to go in the first half, and I had the under in that game, so I was thinking it was too many points. UCLA shut down Abilene Christian to null set, empty set, 0 for 8.5 minutes. They had 12 points with 6.5 minutes left to go in the first half. They went on an 18-0 run. I believe it was 18-0 run to end up blowing that game out in the first half, and then eventually just going and playing good basketball in the second half to not even let them have a chance to come back. The under came through. UCLA by the point spread came through. They're hot right now, Casey. UCLA is hot right now. And then Michigan without Isaiah Livers, I thought they were going to have a tough time against a shooting team like LSU, Javonte Smart, and Thomas, and those guys were shooting. But, boy, their defense was lousy in the second half, and Michigan took over with Dickinson. They just pounded them inside.
Well, the lesson for building your better bracket is you damn well better pick one of these teams that's in the play-in game to go to the Sweet 16 because it's happening pretty much every single year. Now 10-10 all time are those play-in seeds because Charlie pointed this out last week. I mean, you got these are teams from power conferences. We knew either UCLA or Michigan State was going to be a live dog, and that's exactly what happened. I think the Bruins caught a huge break with that fluke win. And I'm sorry, Abilene Christian fans, your team's not good. If you played Texas 100 times, you'd lose 97 of those games, and Texas was just garbage. I still cannot believe that result. It took a 53-52 game for Abilene Christian, who had no business winning that, getting past the Longhorns. But the Big 12 not exactly doing great either. We can talk about that as we expand. But this matchup, look, the Tide is primed. I mean, you guys know I'm a fan of Alabama football. I follow the university closely. I'm on a bunch of different fan forums. And Tuscaloosa has just gone crazy for Coach Oates, who, by the way, proved he could coach at Buffalo, getting into March Madness there. They haven't even seen the best of Petty yet. Shackelford and Jones have been doing their thing, and they are in a great position. Another thing that I would mention is that the announcers did a great job kind of telling us who UCLA was in both games, discussing the fact that they had 2 bigs that they were going to depend on this year who ended up being injured or not with the team. Their coach did a great job of adjusting, and Mick Cronin certainly knows how to coach them up. Look at all those years he led Cincinnati to the tournament. He did a good job of adjusting. Having Johnny Juzang is obviously a huge thing for UCLA because this guy is a talent, and I wouldn't be surprised we maybe end up seeing him at the next level. But this point spread, it feels to me like we're saying fade the public, fade the public. I think the public's on this one just very sharply here. It opened at 4.5. It's at 6.5 now. I'm not going to be shocked if this bad boy gets all the way up into the 7 range by the time it tips off. And I'm telling you, Chuck, it's not just because I'm a homer. I mean, look, Alabama is legit. They are the champions of the Southeastern Conference. They are the best team in that region of the country. And I'm not going to be shocked at all. They don't make it all the way to the Final Four. I mean, they're that good.
Yeah, guys, I was thinking about this before we went on the air. If I would have told you before the tournament started that 25% of the Sweet 16 would come from the Pac 12, you both would have fired me from this podcast. I mean, absolutely, you would have fired me. It's phenomenal. I mean, all of those Pac-12 teams have got to be so proud of themselves. And UCLA is like light years ahead of where we thought they would be because they're a rebuilding program. I mean, they were not in good shape. So for them to come and be where they are right now as a play-in 11 seed and make it into the Sweet 16, wow. I mean, that's like winning the championship. But Casey, I got to agree with you. And shoot, man, I'm not an SEC fan, and I certainly am not an Alabama fan. You know that. But yeah, Alabama's good. Alabama's really good, and I think this is probably the end of the road for UCLA, and that kills me because Cronin's dad. Every time I watch that guy, I go, man, I want that guy's kid to win. I want his team to win because I watch that man's face every time they win, and it makes my heart. I'm such a softie, man. I cry when I see puppies, so I'm that kind of guy. But yeah, I think this is probably the end of the road for the Bruins. But man, if it is this not a successful year? Good grief! I mean, just for the Pac-12, guys. I just heard yesterday, this is overall the lowest seeded Sweet 16 in the history of the NCAA tournament. The average seed in the Sweet 16 is 5.88.
Right.
Never happens. Never has happened. I mean, it's crazy. Now, okay, it's COVID, it's everything else, but wow, it's just us. And Casey, what was it? You had that total thing that you shared with us that was nuts too about the Sweet 16, the total number thing. What was that?
I believe that the seeds that are remaining add up to, I think, 94, and the previous total was 89, and that was all the way back in 1986. So this is the maddest madness that's ever been played. And Vasu, part of the reason why that's happened is teams that we thought were also rans from power conferences have stepped up, like the team we've just been talking about for the last 10 minutes, UCLA and Oregon State. It's funny because it's not maybe the teams you thought would be the competitive 12s and 11s and lower seeds, but when you play in a good conference and then you get out to a neutral court, anything can happen.
So Michigan's 2.5 without Isaiah Livers. I thought they were going to have a tough time, like I said, against LSU. Quick reactions here, Casey and Charlie. Michigan and Alabama cover, or you think it's going to be an underdog or a split? Casey?
I'll probably go with the split. Florida State, a very tough team to figure out. They've won, money line for you, but they've also, again, going back to the ACC tournament when they lost in the semifinal, that was pretty shocking. And the fact that I just still don't even know what their identity is. And, I watched all these games, but I still don't know exactly what Florida State brings to the table. Now, having said that, they did disperse Colorado with a quickness 71-53. So they're certainly peaking at the right time. And look, Charlie, I'll throw it to you for the Big Ten analysis here. Michigan's the only hope they have. And if they don't have a team in the Final Four, I would argue that would be the most shocking result in the history of college basketball, considering it's one of two conferences we've been talking about literally for the last 6 months.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you put 9 teams into the tournament and don't have one team go to the Final Four, that is got to go up as one of the most unsuccessful seasons in the history of men's college basketball. I mean, how would it not? And guys, I don't know. I haven't been that impressed with Michigan's play so far. I mean, I know that injuries and everything else. I don't know. I think they're going to win this game. I got to tell you, I have no money to spend on this game. Just because I'm serious. And part of my job is to give advice on these kind of things. Folks, put your money in your pocket on this game. I think this is a dangerous game. And at 2.5, and it might go to 3 if there's a lot of money that starts getting thrown out there. But this is not a game. This is not a game where you're going to pay your mortgage.
Well, if you don't have any money, just pull your credit card out. What's wrong with that?
Yes, this is why we have 1-800 Gamblers Anonymous. Is that exact thing?
Don't pull your bankroll on the whole 16. Well, I'll say this about Michigan. They've surprised me a little bit because I thought they were going to struggle without Livers. And Alabama defensively, Nate Oates has them going. Their pace is about 5th or 6th in the NCAA. So good for them, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right, the last one is the West region. Gonzaga. How about, speaking of cruising? How about Gonzaga cruising 13.5 over Creighton? And Creighton's not bad. 158 the total. Creighton hasn't scored that much in about 3 weeks, but Gonzaga 13.5 over Creighton. They really played and toyed with who do they play? I don't even remember now. It's been so long, but they barely covered their 15 on Monday because I had them laying 15, and it looked like 15.5 was the closing line. And there were some people that were fighting it out, waiting for a basket or a technical foul or something, which did happen, and they did end up winning by 16. But right now, and I know Casey says no mid-major is going to win, and it's going to be tough I'm having a tough time believing that right now, the way Gonzaga is playing, because you got Corey Kispert, Jalen Suggs right there, a lottery pick. Oh, he's having a off night. Let's go to Corey Kispert for 25 feet. Oh, he's having an off night. Let's go to Nembhard at point guard, 14 points a game. You got a Yeye there. Oh, he's averaging 11 points a game. Oh, and if that's all failing, let's go to the big guy down the middle, and he'll get double-double, 30 and 17. Talking about Drew Timme playing against a small team there. And sure enough, a balanced attack by Gonzaga. I think Creighton's in trouble here. This could be a 20-point game for Gonzaga this weekend, Casey.
Well, that's why they had to set the point spread high, because Vegas is going to be wanting for Creighton money, and they just might not get it. I think all three of us are pretty surprised that, considering the on and off the court stuff that Creighton's dealt with, especially late in the season. Again, coaching. McDermott did a good job of rallying the troops, apologizing for what he said, and getting back out there on the court. The thing about the Zags is they remind me of my alma mater, UNLV, who wasn't supposed to win the title either, and it was able to do so back in 1990. Here's the deal. If you can recruit NBA players, I don't care where you're located in the country or what conference you play in, you're going to have a great chance. And Suggs is going to be a hell of a draft pick for whoever takes him. What a great tournament as far as watching NBA talent, whether it's Cunningham, Mobley, or what we're talking about here with the Bulldogs. And the other thing is, guys, peaking at the right time. Look at these averages: 86, 78, 88, 98, 87 points scored in their last 5 games. They held Norfolk State to 55 points, and obviously they got to play the worst underdog in the tournament, and that helped them out a little bit. But there's nothing not to like. I mean, the team is averaging, again, in college basketball, 92 points a game while only allowing 63. That means they're averaging 29-point victories every time they step on the court. They're so balanced. They won 28 games in a row, and I'm going to have to eat my words unless a Baylor or one of these other teams can really step up. I think if you're a Bulldog fan, Chuck, you've got to be just thrilled with the way the team is playing. Again, I will talk about coaching until this tournament ends, because the best coaches in America are the 16 right now that are still standing. And Mark Few is due. He knows it. He knows this is their year. I have no reason not to believe, at the very least, they're going to be in the national championship game. And I know we'll talk about it as we get towards it, but I wouldn't want to be Creighton this weekend. That's the one favorite where I'm kind of like, yeah, if the Gonzaga Bulldogs play like they will, they're going to beat the living hell out of them. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and to borrow your great phrase, none of these games are too tasty for me this weekend. But if you're gonna, if you need to get some action, take this game and take Gonzaga. I mean, for heaven's sakes. I mean, poor Creighton. See ya. Goodbye. Dress for the first half and get your sweats out for the second half. I mean, I've been starting to put scenarios together, and I know that I've said that the Zags can't win this thing. Well, I'm not saying that anymore. Okay, I'll be the first to go on record. I'm not saying that anymore because this tournament has gone so nuts, that I've thrown out my crystal ball. I've thrown out my 8 ball. I've thrown out everything because I don't know. I think my best prediction now is that maybe the Zags win this tournament, and then Mark Few goes to Indiana and becomes the new head coach of the.
Ooh.
So there you go. That's my new prediction there. I mean, let's start that rumor on the internet and really drive everybody.
Well, I'll say this about Gonzaga. So let me ask you this: yes or no, Casey? Is this a low point spread for Gonzaga? Then you think?
I do. I think it's off. I could bet this number up to 15.5, 16. I'd be comfortable with it. Really, I'd probably look at the first half. I think they'll come out and they'll get going, and you're probably looking at about 7, 7.5, 8. I'd be very surprised if they're not up by that margin. And look, we're not trying to disrespect Creighton, Vasu. I mean, I think all three of us have respect for what that program has done in the past. They're literally the best basketball team from the state of Nebraska, and it's not even close, it seems like. But they're in trouble, man. I mean, maybe they were a beneficiary of a draw, but no team outside of Baylor has played more complete basketball in the first 2 games. And you mentioned Baylor did struggle for a half. So basically, if we're doing our report card and the future odds bear this out, Gonzaga is the clear-cut favorite. They're getting you plus 150 now on the future bet, which is nothing. And then Baylor at 4.5 to 1 is your second choice. Let me ask you this, Vasu. If I make you pick the next tier of teams who you think could get it done, Michigan and Houston 9 to 1, Bama 10 to 1, and then all of a sudden Loyola of Chicago, little Loyola of Chicago, are the 6th choice on the board at 14 to 1. I don't feel like I could pick any of those teams to win the title.
Well, let's just start a rumor that Porter Moser is going to go to Indiana too, since it's so close to Loyola Chicago as well too. So we'll see where they are at the 6th place spot. Let's hit the West region here with the last game. By the way, I think that line is low too, and I just looked on my site here. Gonzaga is 7.5 points for the first half, since they do already have the first half line out there. So the best game of the weekend for me in a conference that I will not lie to anybody and say I did not think that Pac-12 was going to have this many teams in the tournament, let alone as far as they have been. 4 teams still there, and honestly, Colorado played well for about 35 minutes, and they just struggled toward the end. They didn't hit the kind of shots that they did against Georgetown. Their 3-point shooting was off. That's credit to Florida State. But Colorado could have easily been here as well, too. And USC 2.5, 139 versus Oregon, Casey. The best 2 teams that I thought at the beginning of the year, and I am on record to say that I thought USC Oregon were the 2 best teams in this conference, and they could go far. Chris Duarte. They didn't play in the championship game. They got beat by Oregon State, and they got beat by Colorado. Colorado beat USC 3 times this year, twice in the regular season, then once in the semifinal game of the Pac-12 tournament. And then Oregon beat up on Oregon State twice in the conference, in the regular season conference. And then Oregon State got hot, got healthy. Ethan Thompson shooting the lights out. Their center is playing well. Everybody is just shooting well. Lucas is shooting from 3. He's falling down to the ground, 45 degrees to the ground, shooting 3s, hitting 3s everywhere, and they're hot right now. But this USC-Oregon game goes a long way for me as far as the Elite 8 and maybe even possibly Final 4. And I lean toward USC in this because the Mobley twins, Evan Mobley is a stud. They can shoot the ball. Drew Peterson's an underrated guard. He shot the ball well. Taj Eddy, their point guard, is great. Anderson also had a big game. I mean, what they did to Kansas, and I know Kansas had all sorts of issues with COVID and they didn't play, and this was their first game. They had a tough time in their first game, in their opening round game too. But to come out against USC, and they don't shoot the ball well to begin with, and let alone now they weren't healthy, Casey. But, boy, 34-point whooping by USC of Kansas. I did not see that coming. And they were only a 1.5-point favorite, and that was a pick-up all the way to 1.5 by the time the game started on Monday night.
Yeah, team, COVID plays. Bet against Virginia. Ohio beats them outright. Bet against Kansas in that second round. USC just blows the doors off them. And I love this SC story, not just because I used to do a radio show in Las Vegas and my co-host went to USC, so I've got a lot of love for the Trojans and their family. Andy Enfield was criticized when he took that job. They said, you're not going to be able to recruit in Los Angeles. You're not going to be able to get guys to come here. People, you forget that he was the coach at Florida Gulf Coast. FGCU forever. Let's go Eagles, the team that pulled off the shocker back in 2013 and made it to the Sweet 16. So he wanted to get himself around a program where he could recruit. He's at a great school. He's got maybe the best player in the whole tournament on his team. And he's also got this going for him. They've played Oregon this year, and they beat them pretty soundly. 72-58 back on February 22nd. So we're not even talking that long ago. The thing about the Ducks is they've come to burn brackets down as well, because they're another team that got no respect. We even forget that Dana Altman's their coach, another guy that can coach, by the way. Every coach left is a great coach. But this one, I think, spells a little bit of trouble for the Ducks, because they're going against a team that's already seen them, that's already beat them, that has one of the top 3 picks in the NBA draft. But this line movement is already confusing me, Chuck. It opened with Oregon -1. The public has now bet USC up to 2.5. This one feels like it could be a 1 bucket contest that really comes down to the last minute before it's decided.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, because these teams know each other. How often do you get to say that in the tournament? I mean, Altman has proved himself to be a great coach. He keeps putting teams in the tournament. So these are, a 6-7 seed. I mean, this is what you paid to have happen in a tournament. I mean, this is going to be a good one. And by the way, if you're interested in this game, in wagering, this is the kind of game where this is a money line game to me. I mean, it really is. I mean, this is because I don't know. I mean, spread wise, I get nervous because I think this game can go either way. I mean, this is going to be one of those games where somebody's going to go on a little run at some point, probably in the second half, and that's going to make all the difference in the world. Somebody in that under 8, maybe under 4 is going to go on a little 7-8 point run, and it's going to make the difference. It's going to make all the difference in the world in this game. I'm anxious to watch this game. This should be a great basketball game.
I know it's only Wednesday, but should I call my shot now? USC is going to dominate Oregon. They beat them in LA. They only played once this year because Oregon had their COVID issues during the middle of the year. I know Oregon's come back. I just am not sold on Oregon defensively, and I love the Mobley kid in the middle, and Evan Mobley and Isaiah Mobley, and their guards are playing great right now. And the way they came off of Kansas, how can you not have that type of confidence going in? And I think 2.5 is a bargain right here. They're probably top 3 defensively of the 16 teams left right now of this group. So I'm calling my shot right now for everybody out there. USC -2.5. And if you want to do that, you want to take the money line, fire away on that. I'll tell you that on Friday. I'll tell you that on Saturday. Even when they lose, I still think USC will be back. We'll see with that. All right, as we wrap up the regions here, let's just hit a couple of storylines here from college basketball from last weekend. Gonzaga, Villanova cruising, Baylor solid, Arkansas rolling, Houston had a tough game. Oregon State surprise wins. They're going to play Sister Jean and Loyola Chicago. By the way, Sister Jean, we mentioned her, and she does get a lot of play for a lot of reasons. God bless her. She had the best scouting report of anybody. She even cited stats against whoever they were playing. I can't remember who they're Georgia Tech. I know who they play on Sunday. I forgot who they played on Sunday. It's been so long now. But anyway, 50% made layups, 30% threes.
They played Illinois, the number 1 team.
Oh, they played Illinois, right. How far? They said that Illinois, she said 50% layups, 30% threes. Our guys can stop them and we can win. And if we beat Illinois, then we'll go to the Elite Eight. So she was there and she did that. One quick story on Wayne Tinkle. Wayne Tinkle's dad, if you guys got the interview, post-game interview, his dad went to Loyola Chicago. He grew up in Chicago. So this is kind of a rematch, and he was getting emotional because I think his dad probably has passed away by now. But he brought it up, and it's kind of a little storyline there. They're going to bring it up on CBS or Turner this weekend when they play that his dad went to Loyola. He's shot in that gym growing up. His dad was a student there, and he went and played ball there in that gym. So he knows that school and he knows that gym. So they're going to bring that up as well. And I'm not sold on Michigan completely, even though they played great. They have to shoot the ball well, and Hunter Dickinson's great without Livers. So let's take a look at this last weekend. What were your impressions? Let's take a couple of minutes each, Casey. What were your impressions from last weekend of this group of teams right here?
Well, you laid it out pretty good on the screen there. I mean, Gonzaga looks like the best team in the nation. I'm impressed by Baylor. It's the reason why I bought a futures ticket on them, because I can't buy a 2-1. That's just not, there's no value in that. You could bet on Gonzaga every game and make more doing it that way. I still think that Baylor may have their best basketball ahead of them. And, you know, as much as we criticize how terrible the Big Ten and Big 12 have done, don't be surprised if we see, you know, Michigan and Baylor both at the Final Four. I mean, that wouldn't be a statistical improbability, in my opinion. As far as Arkansas, I talked about Musselman and what he did earlier. Very good. And yeah, that Oregon State, I didn't even know that. That's a fun nugget right there. You put that on Facebook that the guy's dad coached at Loyola of Chicago. Loyola Chicago has been said more in the last week than they have been probably in the entirety of their school, even when they made it to the Final Four in 2018. I feel like they're the sexy pick for America at 14-1. A lot of people are buying future tickets. I saw the Action Network post a ticket. Some guy, you know, pulled a wild hair out of his butt and put $100 on him at like 500-1 earlier this year. So now he's playing for $50,000 on a team. By the way, sell that ticket, sir. Please, I implore you. Please sell that ticket. But all in all, it has been a pretty wild ride. This tournament is unprecedented. And the one thing that I learned is to take my own advice, because I literally went against my gut as I gave you folks loser after loser. San Diego State -3, garbage. UConn -3, no business being on the court with Maryland. Vasuk was big on Wisconsin. I thought Roy Williams wouldn't lose for the first time ever in the first round. Well, that happened. I gave you that pick. Sorry, folks. St. Bonaventure didn't show up against LSU, lost that one. And thank Christ the UNC Greensboro, I got him at 10.5, or I would have had an offer on the show. I dropped my record of my winning percentage, your units. I feel so terrible, everybody. I'm sorry. And by the way, guys, I'm rambling. I got to go. Let me get my NBA pick in here before we head out for the day, and then you two can conclude on the tournament. Kings and Hawks are going tonight. Sacramento's off a 2-game win streak on their road trip that they just returned from. Atlanta's been playing really well, 8-2 in their last 10. I expect this one to be fireworks flying, and I am going to dance with that high total of 230.5. Put your boots, strap up your boots, sit back, and expect this one to probably be in the 240, 250 range before it's all over. And I'll look forward to talking more about the madness with you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of the show.
All right, Casey, we got tomorrow. Don't forget, we got NBA trade deadline tomorrow too, Casey. So we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. All right, Charlie. Last thing here on the NCAA is let's go to the lower seeds here, and I want. Oral Roberts, Syracuse, UCLA, all double-digit seeds. Alabama defense solid. Creighton, tough second game. We know they've got Gonzaga. What's your impressions on this?
Well, you know, one of the things that I've heard said from several different people is they're saying that Oral Roberts may be the best 15 seed in the tournament in years.
They're really good.
You know, I kept going, well, you know, why would that be? And then I started looking at their roster. And they've got a lot of players from Europe. They've got a lot of players from Central Europe. And I think that could make a real difference, because one of the things that we know about Central European basketball players, just from seeing them in the NBA, is that when those kids learn to play basketball, they learn to play basketball. They don't learn to be centers. They don't learn to be power forwards. They learn to play every position on the floor, so that when they become basketball players, they are capable of being positionless basketball players. And I think that's one of the things that's paying off for them, is that they have a well-rounded team that is supplemented very well from having players that have international experience. So I think that's kind of fun. And to have some mid-major teams in the Sweet 16, to me, that's what the tournament's all about. You know, I've kind of been with Jay Billis on, you know, hey, a mid-major is not going to win the deal. Well, you know what? Jay changed his mind. You know, he's on Gonzaga now, big time. And I figure if Billis can change his mind, I can at least open my mind and say, you know what? I'm not so sure now that I should say that they can't win. I still think I'm Casey and I both really like Baylor.
I like Baylor a lot too. I think Baylor's a solid team. I think they've struggled this year.
I'm not so sure that Baylor might not be the team that comes out on top. I didn't pick them in my bracket, by the way. I picked Illinois. As a matter of fact, I was ready to jump off a bridge because I put Illinois and Texas in the final game because I didn't want to go chalky, and I thought, well, at least Illinois will make it into the finals for me. So don't ever ask me for a bracket.
Well, but, you know what? The thing about Gonzaga is Casey talks about mid-major schools and everything like that, but Gonzaga may be in a mid-major conference, but they're no mid-major school. They are definitely not a mid-major school. And the fact is, Mark Few has been there for 20 years and 10 more years as an assistant. He's not leaving anywhere, and I don't know why he would leave. He's all set up there. I mean, he's king. If this was an English colony, he would be the king of that town, and he would rule over the peasants. Believe me, there's no way that he's ever going to leave Gonzaga.
I think he's the king of the state of Washington. I mean, they've been the best basketball program in the state of Washington.
And they talked about it. Sorry about that, Charlie. They talked about it. He gets the athletes now that Washington and Washington State don't get anymore. And Oregon and Oregon State, they're losing out to Gonzaga too in terms of losing basketball players too. I mean, we just documented Gonzaga. You got Suggs, lottery pick. You got Kispert, first round pick. You got Nemhard. You got Ayeye. You got Drew Timme. Who would want Drew Timme in the middle of your NBA team as a backup center? He looks pretty good. As far as the double-digit seeds, so I'll tell you a little quick story here before we take a break here. Before we move on here, I used to be in a bracket pool where I don't know if you ever remember this or you ever did this, but there was a bracket pool where if you pick the winners, the higher seeds you pick, you get the value of the seed as your total point. So, for instance, if you took UCLA this year as an 11th seed and they win the games, you get 11 points for every win that they would have. So it kind of balances out, taking just the chalk favorites and all that. This year is the year to have that bracket tournament pool back because there is no way that Oral Roberts, can you imagine, 30 points on Oral Roberts, 22 on Syracuse. I'm doing the math in my head. UCLA, 22 points there. And then I think those are the only double-digit seeds left as far as what's going on. And let me give my Pac-12 take here before we close out. By the way, Vasi Vada Party, Charlie O, Casey Freelove had to take off early. Make the Money and Run podcast. Our NBA lines are down at the bottom on the ticker. Not really a lot to talk about the NBA. We'll have the trade deadline tomorrow. Talk a lot more about the NBA tomorrow after the trade deadline. A lot of things going on in the NBA as well. And then Friday we'll preview all the Sweet 16 games. Once again, we'll get to the nitty-gritty of it, as they say, as we get down to it. But the best game of the weekend for me, as I said, is USC-Oregon. The all Pac-12 matchup, 72-58, USC won back on February 22nd of last year. So it's going to be an interesting way to go about it. I'm just fascinated by this whole tournament and how it's going to be and how Indiana's handled it and how the COVID situations and everything. I know we're not past it, but it seems like everything other than that Oregon VCU game that unfortunately had to be postponed. I think the NCAA has done a great job, except for the women's tournament. But that's another story for another time with Mark Emmert not showing the leadership that he should. And Jay Billis, I'm glad you brought him up because I did want to mention him. He called out Mark Emmert for not responding to the women's claims of not having the same equity for 24 hours because he didn't realize it or nobody told him or they just don't care, frankly. I don't know. Having covered women's sports like you and I did, Charlie, they don't get a lot of the equal treatment. And it's unfortunate. I'm glad that somebody called it out. And I'm glad that the men and the men's announcers are calling it out too, like Jay Billis as well too. All right, let's get to picks here. We'll hit the NBA tomorrow. Just a reminder, we'll be back tomorrow at 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific. Facebook Live, Stables Media, YouTube page live both tomorrow and Friday. NBA trade deadline, NCAA talk as we get to the middle part of the NBA season, the second part of the NBA season towards the playoffs. A lot of interesting things going on. We gave you Casey's pick already before he took off. The Kings and Hawks over 230.5 tonight. The Kings, a 3-point underdog at home, as you can see on our ticker below. We have all the NBA lines, some interesting games out there. So he's got the over 230.5. I had the Hawks the other day, Charlie, on the over with the Clippers, and it went over by a lot. And Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks playing well right now ever since Nate McMillan took over. I don't know if I'd lay the 3 points, but I do kind of like this over For Casey, your picks. I have your picks right here. Go ahead with your picks.
Minnesota's playing, so I've got to play in Dallas. I've got to go with Dallas in that one. Even though I've started to become a fan of laying the dogs. It's freaking Minnesota. I mean, come on, let's stop it. Let's be honest. And then in that Memphis OKC game, I'm going to go under there with the 218.5. So that's where I'm going to go. By the way, and I'm just going to mention Casey's pick in that Atlanta Kings game. There'll be one letter that will not be present in the alphabet in that game, and that will be the letter D. There will be no D in that game.
No doubt about it. By the way, Clint Capella having a good year for Atlanta. He's a monster on the offensive boards. And if the Kings
love him. I've always loved him. I got to see him play in the D League when he was playing for Toronto 905. And I said, this guy's got to get into the league. And I love him.
Yeah, he was big with the Rockets when they were making their runs in the Western Conference Finals. And boy, they're a 3-point favorite, especially after the tough loss. They were up by 20 on the Clippers the other night, and they let that one get away. And in fact, the Clippers ended up covering 6.5. All right, my picks for tonight. I'm going to go with one hockey game tonight. I'm going to take the Minnesota Wild under 5.5. They're the hottest team in the Western Conference right now. They have the Anaheim Ducks, who cannot score. The Anaheim Ducks cannot put the biscuit in the basket, as they say, and cannot score. Wild with their defense and their goaltending. I'm going to take them under 5.5. The Brooklyn Nets had a big win in Portland last night. They go into Utah tonight. Utah's not been great. We'll talk about the NBA at the trade deadline, who needs to make trades and who doesn't need to make trades. Brooklyn is one game back of Philadelphia. Philadelphia on a run now of 9 out of 10 without Embiid after their win at Golden State. But I'm going to take Brooklyn plus 9.5. It just seems like a lot. James Harden putting himself back in the MVP talk. I, as well, am going to go with Sacramento and Atlanta over 230.5 for exactly the reason that Charlie said and Casey said. The Milwaukee Bucks, probably one of the hottest teams in the league. Can't figure them out. But they've got 6 points on Boston. Don't know what the trade deadline looks for Boston. Marcus Smart may not be in the lineup tonight, so that may be a big deal. Denver, after last night against Orlando, they're staying in Florida. Actually, they're playing the Toronto Raptors in Florida. They're laying 2 points to a Toronto team that has been pretty much not playing well for the last 3 weeks, and they've got a little internal dissension going on between Pascal Siakam and either one of the assistant coaches or Nick Nurse. And he's their best player on that team, or he's their second best player on that team. So I like Denver -2 tonight. Those are the picks that we have tonight. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll be back at 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific. NBA trade deadline, more NCAA talk. You can always check us out on Facebook, any of our social media pages. Facebook, download and subscribe on Apple or Google or iHeart or anywhere you get your podcast. If you miss any of the live broadcasts, we're looking forward to Sweet 16, the NBA trade deadline. And 8 days from now, opening day for Major League Baseball. We're going to have a Major League Baseball preview show come next Wednesday. At some point in time next Wednesday, we're going to announce a preview of all the Major League Baseball teams, because I am fired up to have 162 games back after the year I went through and what every baseball fan went through last year. So that's going to do it for us today. We'll get to the NBA tomorrow. Like I said, the Sweet 16, the big topic right now. Don't forget to join us. Don't forget to join us. Where is it? Oh, there we are at the bottom. Yeah, don't forget to join us. Vasu Vada Party, Casey Freelove, Charlie O on the Make the Money and Run podcast. This is March 24th, 2021. Again, Facebook Live, Stables Media, YouTube page live. We're powered by Stables Media. And if you missed any of the live broadcasts, you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. All right, for Charlie, Casey had to go early. So for Charlie, I'm Vasu. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the games as always. Good luck. We will see you later.